What's up everybody, I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2022 Acura RDX A-Spec Advance. So, the RDX has had a little refresh here for 2022 after being on the market for about 3 years. And so, the A-Spec version has always existed, and so has the Advance trim, but those two combined hasn't been available until this model year. You could get the PMC edition, which combined those two things in the past, but that was a super rare, limited thing, and so now you're able to just have a normal version of the A-Spec here that has all the nice features of the Advance trim. But as far as this interior, so they did do a few little changes here for 2022, which we'll go through here, but a lot of this is still mostly the same. And we were kind of talking about this earlier in the week, how this interior, I still think it's nice, but it's starting to show its age, and I thought that maybe they would have done more to update it, you know, for this refresh than they did.
Yeah, and there's just a lot of buttons, and buttons aren't bad, it just is beginning to really age the interior of some of these cars.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you know, a lot of the stuff we've been reviewing recently has, you know, double screens that are enormous, and, you know, screens are a big part of that, and if not, then there's a lot of capacitive touch and stuff, and, you know, so I mean, if you're someone who hates all that stuff, you'll probably really feel at home in the RDX because it, you know, gets rid of all that stuff. You don't even have a touchscreen, which is really rare these days. But anyway, first thing here, sitting down in these seats. One cool feature here, if you are someone who loves the A-Spec styling but wished you got the cool seats from the Advance, you now get that here with this Advance trim. And the really cool thing about them, especially if you are someone who's an enthusiast, is that you have adjustable bolstering. You also have adjustable thigh extension, but the adjustable bolstering means you can have it as tight or as loose as you want here for these torso bolsters, and so it really gives us a sportier feel, and that's something that a lot of the competitors don't offer. Outside of stuff like a Maran or something, those would offer that, but otherwise, just it's a really cool seat. And also you see it's this orchid leather color that is exclusive to this trim in particular, and only to this Apex blue pearl color. This is the only combo, so you have to be okay with the blue exterior to get this orchid interior. But this is something that's taken from the Type S models, and is just a really, you know, nice different color from the other normal colors you can get in the interior here. And you do have heating and cooling for these seats, which is great. That's something you get, by the way, on regular A-Specs as well. That's not exclusive to the Advance trim here. Only the bolstering is the exclusive thing here, but really, you know, pretty soft, comfortable seats too.
And with the passenger, it's really, really great because you do get every single thing that the driver does have. You can adjust your seat with the bolstering, you can adjust it up and down, really great.
Yeah, and it's so nice that they do have the same thing for both seats, because you'd be surprised how many vehicles these days don't have a matching passenger seat, and the passenger gets less features and stuff. So really nice that Acura, you know, gives the passenger all that same great stuff. Next to the steering wheel here, so it's a new thing is that you actually have a flat bottom wheel here, which is great. It's taken out of the MDX here basically, and it's just heated as well, which is another really cool feature, considering that was one of my big gripes with the A-Spec in the past, was that you couldn't get a heated steering wheel unless you wanted to do a dealer add-on thing. It was a weird thing after the car was built, but now you can actually get a heated steering wheel from the factory with an A-Spec. I'm glad they have that here. Unfortunately, it is only on this Advanced version of the A-Spec, so you got to go up to these higher, more expensive ones to get it. Otherwise, though, the A-Specs, they all get this flat bottom wheel, and it's really great with large perforations, a great 9-3 grip, paddle shifters here on the back of the wheel. There are a decent amount of buttons on the front, a little more than the average wheel, but still very easy to handle and get used to, and so I really love this new wheel. The gauges here in the RDX are one area where I'm kind of surprised they left them, because they're identical to the version in the 2019 RDX that we reviewed 3 years ago. And with the MDX having a brand new beautiful gauge cluster, I know that is, you know, one level higher in the hierarchy, but I still was expecting them to add digital gauges here just to be competitive, because like we reviewed the Audi Q5 a few months back, that has digital gauges, and basically all the competitors at least offer them if they don't come standard. I mean, I don't mind them. I think they're really cool, especially the A-Spec here. You have the silver faces and a little bit of a sportier kind of throwback to the Integras and stuff of the 90s. And so I like them, but, you know, if you're the average consumer that's just like, oh, well, all these other vehicles give me, you know, higher tech gauges, this is going to kind of just look a little old. But I do love how you have a turbo gauge there and a G meter always right there in the middle of the cluster. And so you can tell that Acura is definitely appealing to enthusiasts a little bit more with this vehicle versus the average GLC or Q5, which is very much more of a mainstream kind of appeal. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, right up top, you have this infotainment screen, which is still a good size. I think it's about a 10-inch screen here, and it's high resolution. I love how it has animated graphics for the background, where you have this like constant like orbit, like galaxy kind of thing with these white dots that are always spinning slowly. It's a very cool looking screen. The big elephant in the room though is that it's not a touchscreen, and it's a little further away, but honestly I still wish they would have just at least offered the touchscreen thing, because there's a lot of other touchscreens like the Genesis GV70, for example. That's a little far away too, but they still give you the touch thing, so that if there's something that's just easier to do by just reaching up and hitting the screen, they give you that flexibility in addition to having a great controller. This screen, in addition to not having that touch thing, you instead have this touch pad to control it. And this is something that only Acura does, where it's not like a laptop touchpad. Instead, it's like you rest your finger for the exact spot you want to touch on the screen, and it's kind of mapped out. And so if you get used to it, you can be very accurate with it. And I personally don't mind it whenever I am in Acura's own screens. The problem is, when you go to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which by the way for 2022 is now wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, which is great. I love that they added that. That's awesome. But whenever you do use that, then that whole touchpad interface goes out the window, and then this does switch over to being like a mouse trackpad thing where you have to drag your finger around in order to control CarPlay. And even when you do that, it's not accurate, and it doesn't respond to my commands. It's very hit or miss, and so it's pretty infuriating whenever you're trying to navigate around a screen that's designed to be a touchscreen, you know, based on your phone, to have you dragging your finger around and it's not accurate, and you're trying to touch a tiny little icon on Waze or something like that. It's just like really frustrating, and this hasn't improved. I was expecting them to improve this over the past 3 years. This is the same exact frustrations that I had with this system in 2019. We did a 700-mile road trip in this vehicle back in 2019, in the 2019 version, and that, I mean, I was on the road trip trying to control Waze with this thing, and it was very distracting and very annoying. And this is the biggest shortcoming of this interior, and is probably one of the biggest deal breakers of this car in general. When you see all the touchscreens that everyone else uses that are miles easier to use, it's just unfortunate that this holds the car back. I think I love the RDX enough I would live with it, but it's really so annoying that I can see why it definitely could hurt RDX sales, and I really hope they fix this at some point. I'm guessing at this point it'll be for the next generation version, but I was hopeful this mid-cycle refresh would fix that, and it just doesn't.
Plus the fact that if this is a family car, it's going to be hard. Me being a mom, if I'm driving and my baby's in the back seat and screaming and whatnot, and I'm trying to figure out something on this screen and I'm driving at the same time, there's just too many distractions to have to try and figure out where I'm touching on the touchpad. Like, it would be so much easier if I could just touch the screen.
Yeah, I mean, I know Acura and Mazda are the two holdouts that are resisting the touchscreen thing, but in my practice with all the hundreds of cars we've reviewed, it's just easier with a touchscreen. And so, you know, we'll see what Acura does in the future, if they continue to fight the trend or just go with it someday.
It is really nice though, when you come down, there is a volume knob and there's tune buttons, but they are right on the driver's side, so the driver does have those controls on the wheel. So I don't know why it wouldn't be on the passenger side, or at least in the middle, but you have your hazard lights in the middle. So I don't know.
Yeah, this is something that actually Lexus has recently just changed with the new NX, where they put the volume knob in the middle of the whole center tunnel here, for that very reason, that if you're a driver, you're using the steering wheel controls anyway, so yeah, why you have two driver-centric volume knobs? It's just, yeah, it's one of those areas where they need to focus on the passenger experience, I think, a little bit more. But the last thing to mention about this screen is that it's hooked up to this ELS Studio 3D stereo. You get the 3D upgrade version whenever you go for the A-Spec and the advanced trims, and it's fantastic. It's 16 speakers, and I still think this is my favorite stereo in this segment of, you know, entry-level luxury SUVs. It is, I mean, it's better than even the Bang & Olufsen system in the Q5 that we tested. I think it's better than the Burmester and the GLC. It's so immersive with the surround sound. I mean, you have speakers in the roof. This is something you do not get with GLCs or Q5s. I mean, you have it's a very cool speaker placement, and everything is just so good. It also does play lossless audio, so I mean, if you're really a techie when it comes to your music stuff, you'll be able to have a very top-notch experience here in the RDX, and that's another huge selling point that I would put up with this touchpad just to get this amazing stereo, because it sounds so good. So that is one great thing about this. But anyway, coming down to the rest of the controls here, you have, like you've mentioned, plenty of buttons here, and this huge dynamic mode controller there, which would have been a really convenient place for a little controller knob or something as a backup to this touchpad. But anyway, I think everything is kind of nice the way that it's arranged here, and it is nice to again have those buttons so you don't have to poke through the menu to turn on heated seats or anything like that. And also this area is really nice that you have like leather padding here, and everything feels pretty plush and premium, because that's something, again, you don't always get with some of the competitors. The GLC, for example, does not have a padded knee area here. And here in this A-Spec, you'll see that you do have some Alcantara here on the doors and the aluminum, but if you were to go for a regular advanced trim, a non-A-Spec version, you would have open pore wood. It's like a walnut wood, looks really nice. You can get some more richer looking leather colors, get rid of all this Alcantara and stuff if that's not your thing. So you can make this feel a little more luxurious in here than this one, might look here. And storage space is also another thing that's fantastic here in the RDX. So I think this is, again, a little bit better than most of the other competitors with that kind of stuff. So, I mean, first off, you'll see right underneath this whole center console area, you have this huge bin, and this is what you don't get in any of the competitors, really, where you have this massive opening, which now for 2022 does come with a wireless charger, and so that's nice that you have that here, and it's rubberized and has some brackets to hold your phone in there really well. You also will see a power outlet and a USB-C jack down there. Interestingly, though, that is for just charging. If you want to do a plugged-in CarPlay, you do have to use the plug here in this little bin instead.
And I think that's nice anyways, because if you were to be having it on the wireless charger, I feel like you couldn't see your phone that much, and sometimes you need to see your phone.
But otherwise, yeah, you have this other little slot by your USB jack, two cup holders, a really nice, solid feeling metal. It's really thick metal here for this cover and just feels very expensive, honestly. And then you have this center armrest, which is padded a little bit. I wish it was a little softer, but still nice enough. And you open that up and you'll see a smaller little bin, but compared to, again, all the other stuff you have here, I think that this is definitely head and shoulders a lot better than some of the other competitors with cargo space. And you'll also see you have little bottle holders here in the doors. So that's all really nice. The only other thing I want to mention up front here is that you now have the Iconodrive ambient lighting system, which means you have, I think, a couple dozen different colors that are all named after different famous locations all around the world and racetracks and things like that for the ambient lighting. And it's really nice to have the ambient lighting here. It's not quite as bonkers as it is in some of the Audis and Mercedes and stuff. It's pretty subtle. It's just having it right here on the center tunnel and then on the doors and stuff, but still nice to have.
And it's really nice because in the back seat, the ambient lighting does extend to there, because with your map lights, there is just a teeny tiny little LED that comes down and you can see, but it's not so much so that it will bother the driver. But it was really nice when I was sitting back there with the baby that I could see her and she could see me in the dark.
Yeah, so it's really nice. You have, I always like whenever they kind of, BMW did that a long time ago, where they have like a little subtle glow in the whole interior in addition to just having neon strips on the dashboard. So yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that. And another thing that I also love is that you get the panoramic moonroof here on all RDXs, and that's another really great thing to enhance the backseat passenger experience, to have, that our baby loves looking up through the glass roof there. And so it's really great that that's also just a standard feature, because a lot of the other competitors either don't offer that, or if they do offer a glass roof, it's big money and it's on top trims or it's some big expensive option. So it's really great you get that as standard here if you're someone who loves that. But moving on to that back seat here in the RDX, I think that that's actually one of its strong suits, because this whole vehicle feels a tiny bit bigger than like a Q5 or something like that. And even like we just had the Genesis GV70 last summer, and that was another one where I feel like this might have a tiny bit more space than that. I'm 5'9", and me sitting behind my myself, I have about 3 inches of legroom to spare, which, I mean, isn't a huge difference from the competitors, but I feel like you might get an inch or so more here than you do in some of the others. It just feels pretty nice and spacious. You also will see whenever they look forward that they have dedicated air vents, and here in the Advanced trim you get outboard heated rear seats, so that's great that you have that here on the A-Spec Advance, and you also have 2 more USB-C jacks.
And going back to the heated seats, they were nice and they did work. However, it did take a little while for them to turn on. So just keep that in mind.
Not as toasty as the front ones, I guess.
No.
So yeah, and then there's also a fold down center armrest there though. And you also have bottle holders in those doors as well. And the last little thing to mention is, we're talking about, we've been driving around with the baby in the back, and with the rear facing car seat here, it does fit in here pretty well, and you're able to fit, and at least I was able to fit with about an inch of legroom to spare up front here. So it's not an enormous amount of space, but at least your knees aren't crunched into the dashboard. So it definitely is workable, for this, if you're actually be hauling around an enormous rear-facing car seat, it does work.
Yeah, just for the time being, it does work. It's not my favorite, but I do tend to sit in the back with the baby anyways. It's just easier.
Yeah, so but keep in mind, that's kind of what you're going to be working with space-wise. So anyway, moving on to the cargo space here in the RDX, that is another thing where I feel like this is actually best in class in my opinion, because they were really ingenious with all the storage bins. So as far as the normal top, hatch area there, you'll see it's about an average length. I think it's maybe a couple inches longer than like a GV70 or a Q5, but nice long space, pretty wide space. You also now have a power outlet there in the rear hatch for 2022, and there's a little cubby there on the left-hand side. But the big thing is whenever you lift up the floor there, you'll see a really deep well, and it's huge. And also the way they did that cover, it flips backwards, so you can actually just leave the part exposed there, so you can just put a couple of grocery bags in there and have it not fly all over the whole interior. And it's really nice that you can kind of contain that one part of the cargo area. But it even gets better because you can flip it backwards once more, and then there's another nice sized bin there as well. And so that's a lot more underfloor storage space than what you get with basically all the competitors. And so if you're really wanting the most cargo space possible in this segment, I think this hands down is the winner in that regard. This is actually my favorite cargo area in any SUV. Not like that's a big accolade, but personally, I love how they incorporate all those extra spaces. And so yeah, that's about it as far as all the improvements here to the interior and the RDX for 2022. It's not huge, and just having the wireless smartphone integration, the ambient lighting, wireless charging pad, little things like that. I do wish they did more things like we mentioned, but I still think the RDX is a really nice option, especially considering it does come in a couple $1,000s cheaper than some of its competitors, and so you do have a value play here with the Acura over the established luxury German brands and stuff like that. But yeah, I still just really like the RDX, and part of that is because of how amazing it drives. So definitely check out the driving review if you want to hear all about how this thing drives. It is definitely my favorite driving one of the bunch in this segment. But anyway, that's all of our thoughts. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.